Do you hate playing against the Caro Kann defense? So did I, until I started playing a bad opening against it, and now I can't stop beating it. I've won 9 of my last 10 games against it, and I'm going to show you how to play it, and you'll love facing the Caro Kann from then out. So just to show you the proof before we get into the theory, these are my last games against the Caro Kann. You'll see here I filtered for rapid, which is the only real rating I care about. Any opponent, any result against the Caro Kann. And you'll see here we've won our last 8 games in a row, which is absolutely unheard of in the rapid rating range. And we'll see here if we knock it out to 10, the last 10 games, we've won 9 out of the last 10. And the one game we lost, our opponent played 93.6 accuracy. So they really had to work for it. Now, what is the opening I'm talking about? It is the Rasa-Studier gambit. Let's check it out. So the Rasa-Studier gambit goes a little something like this. So we start off with our standard Caro Kann. We go e4, they play c6, and like I have never not faced the Caro Kann once my opponent played c6. It really is a railroad kind of opening. I'm sure there are other ones you can play, but once c6 happens, the Caro Kann is happening, and now I'm thinking, unreal, we're going to win this game. So you play d4, just claim a good chunk of the centre. Again, this is pretty standard Caro Kann stuff. You might be looking to play the advanced Caro or something like that. They push their pawn, completing the Caro Kann sort of tabia, I guess. So then we bring out our knight to c3, known as the Chigorin variation. Again, standard enough sort of Caro Kann stuff, and nothing has gone bad here in the computer's eyes. You can see the evaluation on the left-hand side. Still has an edge for white. If black takes here, which again happens very, very often, in almost all cases they do take there, this is where the gambit comes into play. So we play a little f3. Never play f3 except in this specific case, and this is known as the Rasa-Studier gambit. Now in most cases your opponent will take here, but if they don't and they just like develop their knight out, don't worry, just take it back and you're fine. We're back on sort of steady footing, and we have pretty decent center. We can develop our pieces here and here, and we're all gonna have a great time. It's fine. But the likelihood is they probably will accept this gambit because it's a free pawn. So once they take here, you take back with your knight, and now you're thinking, okay, so what? We've given away a pawn for like a little edge in development, maybe a little nicer center. I mean, that's a decent enough reason to give away a pawn, but not quite convincing as yet. And the computer isn't convinced. And this sort of brings me to one of the main points I wanted to talk about in this video, and that is around junk or bad openings. Just because an opening is refuted by the computer or by grandmasters, that doesn't mean it's off limits for you to play. In fact, a lot of joy can be wrought from these sort of junk or lesser studied openings in the intermediate, the advanced and the beginner range, because the refutation occurs maybe 10 moves into theory, and that refutation might mean giving away a very mild advantage or equality. And that really isn't going to happen in these games. You're generally going to have a more like philosophical approach to your openings, where I know that this is a really strong king side attacking opening, rather than I know that this opening is 0.2 in my favor because of blah 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 blah, blah 10 moves down the line. So I would really advise you to play your openings based on their philosophy, and there's tons of like chessable materials, videos like this on the philosophy around openings that I think is a more valuable way of learning how to open up games rather than learning deep prep and specific moves. So that soapbox derby all out of the way. Why do we actually play this opening? Because black is just going to develop here, and again we're a pawn down, we've weakened our king side. The first video I made on this, and it's called the Caro Kann, I think it's called, I started playing this opening because it has one very specific, very defeatable trap, and that is by bringing your bishop out here to c4. And then if they make a specific blunder, which is bringing their bishop out here, then you can execute this tactic where you take here, king takes, knight takes here with check, king moves back here, you take here, the knight takes here, the queen takes here, and you're actually threatening mate in one a lot of the time. And what I will say is that trick and trap doesn't go away just because it's easily defensible, but you shouldn't play the opening just in the hope that they'll fall into it. It's a nice little feather in the cap, but it's not the specific reason that you play this opening. Because what will happen is, if rather than developing their bishop out, once we move our bishop to c4, they can very easily just put the screeching halt on all of that by moving their pawn out to e6, making this bishop bite on granite, no, not on the knight, on granite over here. And we're just we just look pretty dumb here. We've just given away a pawn. We've got a crummy bishop and a less defended king. So what is the plan here? And I'll tell you that once this happens, I used to just tilt. I used to just say, right, they didn't fall for it, we're going to lose. And you just get really scared and you give away pieces and you lose. Then I realised that there is actually a lot of juice in this opening. And because players don't really study it, and because it is just difficult to play against, I stopped losing hope and started just winning all my games, which is what I would definitely recommend. So what you want to do here, and just to show you the kind of general homes for your pieces, you want to castle here, and always be careful of this. Queen takes with check. So you really want to defend this pawn. That's where I started again, was as I was learning this. Lost a lot of games because this comes with check. And sometimes if you have the luxury, you can play h1. So let's say they just start developing normally at this stage and they play something like this. The general homes for your pieces are going to be bishop here. I like defending this pawn here with this bishop. Sometimes I like to throw in this move as well, just to stop the knight from annoying this bishop here. They might castle this way, which is perfect. That's the way we're going to be attacking, so that's fine. Bishop here, this is more of a safety measure than a kind of a dynamic move, just to protect this and protect this diagonal. And you know, they might start to play something like this. Two other operations that I like to complete before launching a pretty helter-skelter attack is dropping this bishop back down here. Now this goes against opening principles of moving your piece twice, but it's well worth it because A, you get to like lay the bait for that trap that I showed earlier. They might fall into that. When they don't, eventually you want to move your bishop back here, and this does a lot of stuff. This protects this pawn, it opens up this. There are some discovery things if they get kind of greedy and they take here, that you can kind of execute on. But now, after just a couple of moves, and again, black can develop differently, but these are the general homes for your pieces. Now you have two absolutely raging bishops in here. You have an open file for your rook. You have a knight that's ready to come into the action. This knight I generally find is a more defensive knight. That's a piece that I'm very willing to trade off if like this happens. I am so happy to see that because I'll just trade this off. They'll probably open up like here and we're kind of fine. That does open up their bishop, but our attack is actually starting to get pretty overwhelming. Another operation that I like to complete as time allows is just shifting my queen here. Again, it looks a little funny. It's not really a developing move, but it does open up the queen's way to here. And this is where you get that kind of swashbuckling, like knocking on the doors of the king. And still the computer is like, that really wasn't worth a pawn. But again, that's like with perfect play, it's not really worth a pawn. And as I showed you in the games earlier on, 1800 range, this position is still totally playable for white, totally fun to play for white. A very, very comfortable game. And what can generally happen, you bring your queen out here. If you have time, you can double your rooks. You can start to think about sacrificing bishops. You can start to think about leveraging the pin on this pawn. And again, this knight can jump in here to like take away this knight as a defender. Or again, the specifics of the position change. But with all of these pieces in play, and black is doing pretty well. I was using the computer moves, so their best like developing moves to get us to this position. So even when our plan fails, we don't get the trap. And even when black plays perfectly, we still have a really lovely position. And the likelihood is they aren't going to play perfectly. They aren't going to develop in like such a neat, unfoldable way that has these two lovely bishops. They're probably going to make some, you know, unnecessary pawn moves, or maybe get a little bit greedy in the center, which you can just do this. So let's say they do this, you can just do this. And if they go something like this, like your bishop is perfectly fine here, probably safer here. And they've kind of made a mug of themselves on the queen side. So that is the Rasa-Studier gambit. Again, a bad opening that I've wrought so much fruit from, and I really recommend playing it. It is a ton of fun, and that's another thing, is chess should be fun. It's a hobby for most of us. If you're an IM, don't play this. If you're anybody else, play it to your heart's content, and you'll find up winning a load of games. There's a little bit of getting used to, but I think it takes the sting out of the Caro Kann being like this really closed and stodgy and annoying defense to play into an opportunity to be like, yes, now I can do the thing. I can play my Rasa-Studier gambit and really take the bull by the horns and have a blast of a game, regardless of what happens. So, that is the Rasa-Studier gambit. That is how I've won 9 of my last 10 games using a bad opening against the Caro Kann, and you can too. That is all from me today, folks. If you did enjoy this, it would mean the world to me if you stuck around and subscribed or liked and commented on the video to get this shared out the place. And I'm always on the hunt for junk openings that are actually class. So if you play any that you have a lot of success with, let me know, and it might even end up like a video like this. Thanks very much, and have a good day.